our intuitions and experiences that we're all operating on, which is good, but really being able to say, okay, let's benchmark where we are with operations, with partner technology, what the pain points are, what's working, right? What's driving more revenue from partnerships, and also how our organization's viewing partnerships.
We realized that a lot of people don't understand partner program design. To me, that was crazy because we understand the sales program design, we understand marketing campaign design and offer design and messaging design and all this stuff, but we don't apply the same rigor to the partner program. Problem is actually because the company is not heading into partnerships and there's just an experiment happening, right? It's kind of like you just said, which is like you had to go cheerlead. In the world we're about to head into, there's no cheerleading happening. It's like kill or be killed.
Asher and Kelly, obviously you don't really need introduction. Kelly, partnership advocate in HubSpot, right? You've done so much things in partnerships, so I guess it's sort of like difficult to even define your role.
Kelly is the queen of partnerships.
Exactly.
That is most definitely not my title.
That's what we're going for. The queen of partnerships. If it's not now, by Q1 of next year, it'll be it.
Obviously, you, Kelly, was one of the people who sort of championed this report, and Asher, you do too many things as well. You are leading Partnership Leaders, which is a great organization.
I'm an SDR for Kelly, basically.
Yeah.
An SDR for the Partner Ops Report.
Yeah.
That's his fourth job.
That's true. Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
As Roman mentioned, I'm the platform ecosystem advocate for HubSpot, which no one really knows what that means, but is essentially growing the ecosystem by engaging partners, both our current partners, but also prospective partners out in the ecosystem. And prior to this, I was leading marketing at Pandium, which is an embedded iPaaS, so very much in the partnership and ecosystem space.
Thank you so much. And Asher, I would love to hear like a brief version of all these roles that you've done and things so you've been doing. And it's like it's difficult to like even keep up with.
Yeah, keep it under 20 minutes.
I know. It's a blessing and a curse both, like that's what it is. So hey everybody, this is Mathew. I'm one of the go-to-market VPs at Demandbase, and I would say in my spare time, I started this community called Partnership Leaders with Chris Samila and Ty Radigan, and that's what led to me being here.
Both of you have a lot of experience in partnerships, and I think what is amazing about your experience specifically is that you've been kind of in an organization which oversees the entire partnership space, right? I think Asher, you've been leading Partnership Leaders, and Kelly, you've been in Pandium and then HubSpot. So you've been doing a lot of work. And then the report that you published a few months ago was like really, really fantastic and I think specific. And I'm really excited for you to sort of share a little bit of like insights. So we have some audience questions that I'm going to ask. But to kick us off, maybe like, I guess, why you decided to publish this report? It's been like very important and long sort of overdue, really. But like, what was the motivation or like sort of trigger for you to do that?
I think the space is sort of rapidly in flux, right? We're shifting from the traditional channel to an ecosystem model. Partner technology is exploding, right? And it's rapidly evolving, but which is great because it's going to unlock a ton of value. But it's also a challenge for partnership people, right? How do we put all these components together to be successful? And there's a real shortage of market data. There's a lot of data that existed on the traditional channel and how those large companies are running that, but not so much on this newer ecosystem model and how companies are responding to the digital transformation around this to tackle partnerships today. So we really wanted to get enough data to bring some market insights and not just have our intuitions and experiences that we're all operating on, which is good, but really being able to say, okay, let's benchmark where we are with operations, with partner technology, what the pain points are, what's working, right? What's driving more revenue from partnerships, and also how our organization's viewing partnerships. And the idea is to sort of have this data and do it on an annual basis so we can really sort of capture this rapid evolution where things are changing so quickly.
Asher, when you got this data, and I think you sort of expected to have like 500 answers, right? Sort of 500 people to participate, and you had 650, which is 30% more, which is amazing. What sort of maybe like surprised you?
I would just add to like Kelly's answer, right? So partnership leaders exist to elevate the role of partnerships at tech companies, right? And so we started off with focusing on people, i.e., what their progression looks like. And we specifically focus on leaders, right? But the other part of the mission of partnership leaders is to focus on helping with scalable processes. And so if you think about once the leader is installed and it focuses on scalable processes, they need technology to go and implement scale. As we were speaking with our members, I would say in like early Q1, we kind of got the feel that if this macro trend really pushes partnerships to the next level, then there is somebody that is going to be needed to own the processes and to own the technology and to own the data. And for us, that is partner operations, because we took a page out of revenue operations, which is a similar role that supports sales and marketing, right? And so that's kind of the context of like why we went and partnered with HubSpot. And I know you're super gracious and kind to say like we expected 500 people, but we really expected 200 people, and then we landed at 650, which was fantastic. But it actually speaks volumes to the need for this type of data, because I even remember when Kelly and I were talking about like starting this project, we were like, well, what exists today? And then the answer was nothing. Of material, right? And so nothing material existed. And so we then kind of started focusing on this piece of it. But to answer your second question, I guess, is the thing that surprised me the most is actually the data point in the report that says in organizations that are, I want to say, that have 140 employees or up to 140 employees or somewhere around that, right? There is one partner ops person that you will find, right? And I've said this a number of times where I believe there are more partner ops people. They're just not called that. And in a lot of cases, the partner managers are actually doing partner ops work, or worse, the partner leaders actually doing the partner ops work. And so the market just understanding that a role is needed so that the people that are supposed to be customer facing or partner facing spend more time in revenue generating activities is actually something that I took out of this book because of, again, my role at Demandbase, which is advising companies on their go-to-market.
I agree with you. I think people should be doing less ops, and then, I mean, in ideal worlds, right? And I guess it's actually true across all functions, right? Like sort of marketing and sales and everywhere. But I think it's so much more obvious in partnerships. And in my mind, this is basically partner ops could be divided into processes and technology, right? And you sort of underscored this in reports asking like, do you have partner program at all? And then sort of going into different technology. Can we talk a little bit overall settings? When do you think companies sort of tend to start partner programs, and when do they tend to start like partner operations sort of today? And when do you think they need to have some sort of partner operations running in ideal scenario?
What was interesting about the results was that it showed early stage companies, like under 100 employees, people already have multiple partner types, right? What we saw is enterprise companies do have more partner types, but it's not a huge bump. It was a little bit over 4, and for earlier stages, closer to 3. So a really interesting finding there, right, is most likely what's going to happen to your company as you grow is you're going to go deeper into these partner types that you've already started, rather than expand out to having 8 or 9 partner types. Now, obviously, some organizations do go down that route as well, but that's not the typical thing. So I think that for startups, that means make sure that you're thinking very carefully about the partner experience from the get-go, because it can be extremely disruptive to later make huge changes, especially wanting to pull back any benefits or commercial terms. But alongside that, I think what we saw is that the start of the partner operations and the partner program is actually pretty early. Now, what it looks like, though, at that stage is more ad hoc. So one of the biggest indicators of driving more revenue from partnerships was to have a programmatic allocation of your resources through your program. So not just to say, hey, here's my 3 tiers, you can be in a partner. And then in reality, it's just the squeaky wheels and the most aggressive partner manager that's getting the go-to-market benefits, right? Like that is usually what happens when programs start, because they just don't have the workflows, the processes, and the internal alignment to make it run from a programmatic level. So I would say, that 50 to 100 employees is where we're really seeing people saying they have some kind of a program going. And I think to Asher's point, at that stage, it's more the partner ops work is being done by the partner manager, someone maybe who's just like an admin / program / analyst / manager. And then I think when you get closer to 200 employees, you start to see, okay, let's have one person. Because the question we asked was, how many people do you have working on this full time, right? So when it says one person, that means they have one person that's their whole job. The first stage is just kind of spread it across a bunch of different people. And as Asher noted, it could be the executive is often the one that has to at least put in the design around it. So I think in that sense, it was promising, right? That we do at least have companies thinking about this early, recognizing that there's a need, even if the execution is fairly poor at that stage.
I would just add, Robert, from a revenue leader perspective, right? Like somebody who's looking at the whole thing, right? Is the minute the first 4 partner deals are done, the next 4 are behind it. And so you should already be thinking about the partner ops process, maybe not the headcount yet, but you should definitely be thinking about like, okay, if the next 4 deals come in and they're being forecasted in whatever shape or form they are going to happen, right? Because the first 4 did happen, and there will be some noise around them inside the company and outside the company. So I would say the revenue leader should have his eyes on staffing this role the minute the first 4 or 5 deals are done.
That's a very good point. So I actually had a conversation with one of my friends. He's CEO of an AI startup, and he was like, we have like 3 people in partnerships, and we're not going to adopt any technology unless we have like somebody in partner ops, which I think sort of makes sense. I'm sort of wondering, going back to technology, in terms of adopting some sort of technology, when do you think is sort of the right time? Is it from the get-go? Is it after you hire like a partner ops person? Like, what's your thinking?
I think it depends on the category. So what was interesting is, most people in their organization said that their organization should have partner technology, and that was true even of the smallest companies. And I think what's probably the category that's easiest to adopt early is account mapping software. So those are all running on freemium plans, right? And you can connect with a partner for free, and it will tell you your overlap, right? That's immediately useful out of the gate, no matter what size you are. But then when you get to more complex technology like PRMs, right, where that's supposed to own your whole partner experience, and it can get more complicated. Now, we do have some newer PRMs that are designed to be maybe like the HubSpot of the PRMs, where they're easier to use and they're not like Salesforce level customization. So I think ultimately it's potentially going to end up similar to the CRM journey, right? Which is where you do put it in early, but you tend to have something easier. It's unusual to see like a 5 to 10 person startup using Salesforce. If you do, it's because they're anticipating they're going to be, 150 by 6 months. And I think that is potentially how we'll go. But I will say it's a little complicated in the sense that you have some systems who are trying to become like the single pane of glass so that everybody can plug into those, which that may happen, in which case I think it will look a little different. And there's probably going to be a freemium element of that where little players can plug in. So yeah, I think I think as the market exists today, you probably want to adopt the account mapping software off the bat. And then I think the PRM, you should hold off until you have at least one person doing the ops. That's my read of it. I think that, some of the more user-friendly ones could potentially add value earlier, but I don't know. Asher, what do you think?
I agree with what you're saying, but there's as you were speaking, there's like interesting questions coming up in the chat. So I guess I'll take both the questions. One is, what revenue level should a partner program be initiated while direct sales model is still not formulaic yet? I'm probably going to get some crap for this answer, but I would say if your direct sales model is not built out, you probably should wait to do anything partner, because your company does not actually know how to partner yet. And I've made this mistake directly myself, and I've also made this mistake indirectly when I advise somebody to do it. So in both cases, the ending was not a happy ending. So I would say if your direct go-to-market is not built out, please be very careful about initiating with partners, because you then risk severing the relationship with the partners as well, unless your entire model of going to market is through partners. Then for sure you have no choice, because that you're going to be working on that anyways, right? And normally I would say somewhere between like $500,000 ARR to $1 million ARR, your direct go-to-market model starts to become clear. At least you have a line of sight of how to get to 10 million. And then once you get to $1 million in ARR, or at least have line of sight to it, right? You should start thinking about like which partners which types of partners you should be including. And the best way to do that is actually just go to the early customers and ask them if there was a partner that they could work with or that they could buy from, what type of partner that would be, and then work with that partner. Just to add a little bit more to the answer, it's interesting that like the average number of types of partners is 3.6, which like Kelly said, like it's in SMB companies it's about 3, and in enterprise larger companies it's 4. And I think what's happening is because you do this shotgun approach on like trying to work with any partner out there, trying to just see what sticks, versus doing the research work, which is go to your customers and go to your prospects and hire services like GLG or Alpha Sites or anything like that, or just ask the analysts in your space, right? Like, who should we partner with? And they'll tell you who to partner with, and you can actually take a much more, I would say, calculated and efficient approach to partnerships. And then that will actually result in success that should technically be much more repeatable and much more efficient than the shotgun approach. So I'll pause there to see if Kelly wants to add something.
Yeah, I would want to add something to that to sort of validate that approach. I think one of the dangers of partnering first when you don't have a direct motion really established is that you lose the direct connection with the customer to some degree. So if you put a partner between yourself and the customer, that can work really well for all the reasons that we know. But when you're very early stage and you're still figuring out essentially product market fit, and you're trying to get that feedback very quickly in as to what the market is looking for, if you rely on a partner to go to market for you, to Asher's point, unless that really is your whole business model, because in some categories that makes sense, you're going to have a harder time getting that feedback directly and getting it quickly. So I think having a successful direct motion tells you that you've connected the dots and you understand what your customer is looking for. And then you can do the research to map out the whole customer journey end to end more easily.
I agree with you. Maybe like this one sort of caveat is some companies tend to have like a pool from customers through partners, so like partners and customers. Meaning, like for example, Asana, I think, had this pool. I guess they had like a working product, so the sort of consultants started to use Asana. Atlassian has the same, and other companies, right? I'm not sure it reached like level of sort of revenue it was happening, but otherwise you need to figure out like direct sales before doing partnership.
So you make a really good point, because if your product is something that is a natural workflow product, which is the example that you gave to us, you're probably going to get partner pull much faster, because the people who are using it, if they're good business people, are going to say, well, I'm using this. What if I sell it? Or what if I support it and make more money from this, right? And then start working on like $1 of Asana gives me $3 of like partner services type of model, right? Because they'll already start thinking that, right? So if you're in a partner pull world, that's fantastic. But even then, I would just say, just be very careful on like making sure that your primary go-to-market is built out. And in the form of in the Asana's case, it's actually a PLG model, right? And so there's lots of things that can go wrong in trying to land and get a PLG model going.
And what we saw in the survey was that technology partnerships were the most common partner types of early stage startups. And I think that's because those don't initially have to be go-to-market in the sense that you're sending each other referrals. Really, it's many product categories. You just have to have certain integrations, right? Even to exist effectively for the customer. So I think a lot of early stage startups build those technology partnerships out, but they work on their direct sales and marketing model. And then when they have a better understanding of that, they can start to commercialize those relationships better.
Asher, please continue answering questions. And generally, I do have my own questions, but we also had some questions fielded by the audience. So unless we have like a live audience asking questions, I have like a big backlog of questions, and I would rather ask focusing questions and then let people sort of read reports.
The other question from Rod is in the first years of the partner program, should we just have a static web form like a Marketo or Elko, or do we push for like an in partner and then have the CFO questioning it? Again, this is just my philosophy of so my fortunate history is that I've been part of 4 startups and then 3 of them exited, right? And so I've seen this go right and very right and wrong and very wrong when we don't understand the process completely and then we push for automation. So when I take any type of, like, let's call it biz dev or partnership roles, I almost always, if the company is using CRM, if the company is using Salesforce, I just go put a web to lead form and get my lead deal registration done. If they're using HubSpot, it's like even simpler to create a landing page that'll just be a lead capture, because that's all you're trying to do, right? And making sure you get the attribution right. So I'm very much against like starting with like a heavy duty PRM product, but I'll go back to what I said before, which is once you see the light, the first 4 deals are done, and you're seeing the next 4 deals in front of you, you need to make sure that a product that will create an awesome partner experience exists. And for sure, you can bring up PRM. But I would also say that before you decide to install a PRM, just make sure you know like who's going to own this. Because if there's no owner, it's the partnership leader. And that's a very expensive person to owning a piece of technology, when you want that person to go out again, do revenue generating activities. Kelly?
Yeah, I agree. Expensive and also potentially not as effective, to be honest, because that, like, it gets complicated fast, and it also requires aligning with other revenue departments, which the partnership leader should be doing that at a strategic level anyway, but doing it down to the nitty gritty of the workflows and the processes and the integrations, which was interesting. When people were buying partner tech, integration was the most important factor, right? And that's because these things don't exist in a silo. So, yeah, I definitely would agree with the more heavy duty PRMs like in partner. Although I know they're currently starting to add more functionality to make it usable for earlier stage companies, but I agree. The marketing and sales technology that exists can be used when you have an early stage program effectively and efficiently. So I would recommend doing that.
This is an interesting one. As Kelly was talking about this, I'm thinking if you're early stage, it's probably better that you spend more time in making sure that the sales enablement team is actually preparing for partner enablement, or just think about how are you going to enable partners, right? Because again, if you get into this lucky situation that Roman talked about, where you have partner pull, you're always going to be catching up to the market, right? And if you are again an early stage executive, and let's call it you're an early stage customer executive, which is a CRO, CMO, CCO, or anybody or CPO, right? You should be thinking about partner enablement and partner experience, because you're going to have investor pressure in most cases to ratchet up or ramp up your direct sales team. and you're thinking about hiring and enabling and all this stuff. And then you have this other, let's call it borrowed sales team, right? Or borrowed solutions team or borrowed customer success team, right? That is actually going to be putting pressure on the same process, right? And so, Roman, I don't know if you have thoughts on this one, because I have a feeling that you have some commentary on this piece.
I'm trying to hold myself plugging in our product, which is like light set of PRM, but from like how our users behave. I agree with you. You need to figure out process and make it sort of like repeatable, at least with a few sort of partners, and then you need to adopt PRM. We try to help sort of users in a way by adding sort of templates, so you can like use customizable workflows which are already pre-built and all this stuff. But yeah, I don't want to focus us on our product. So I would rather like answer questions. But before we go into live audience, next question, there were a lot of questions before live session about KPIs, right? It's like, what are the KPIs for partnership program? I know from speaking with a lot of partnership leaders that it's always difficult. KPIs and attribution. Would love you to maybe like share some thoughts on that.
I thought the survey results were actually better than I would have expected, to be honest, in terms of like the different KPIs that organizations are using for their partner teams. Because if you think about an ecosystem model, right, you need to move away from just doing source revenue. That's like the very focused on the traditional channel, the point of sale. I think that's where we're coming from. And that is still what we found was definitely across all size organizations, the most used KPI. And it should continue to be a KPI, right? But influenced revenue was the second KPI. And I think that that's a good sign, because that is more reflective of the different ways that partners can drive impact. So the fact that the majority of organizations are using that was really good to see. And I think, from there it kind of dropped off, where we had other things that you would expect, like leads, active integrations, partner satisfaction, partner profitability, customer retention, and customer satisfaction, which was pretty low in use. But I think as the field continues to mature, we're going to see more around that, because, partner retention and partner satisfaction, however you term it, is really so important to leveraging partnerships at scale, right? If you're not paying attention to that KPI, if nobody's being KPI'd on that, then you're going to have a problem, because that means that nobody's really honed in on that and nobody owns that. And so your partners, you're going to lose a lot of partner investment and partner loyalty that you could be acquiring, and they're going to leave if they can get a better deal elsewhere, right? They're staying around for the business transactions and the business need. But just like with customers, the partner experience is what can make them overinvest and have loyalty, so they're recommending you to other partners.
Asher, did you have anything like to add in terms of KPI attribution, and maybe like how different companies actually do that?
I think what happens is, and I'll actually answer the CRO/CMO or elsewhere question at the same time, right? In my opinion, the person that cares the most about partnerships, if there isn't a senior partnerships executive that exists in the company, that person should own partnerships, right? And it's the same thing that we actually learned about SDRs, because there's always should sales own SDRs or should marketing own SDRs? And in every case where a senior SDR leader or executive does not exist, right? Because we didn't have SDR executives like Kyle Coleman and stuff like that that are really taking this function to the next level, right? We saw that when the SDR team reported to somebody who didn't care about them and just treated them like a lead generation machine, those people suffered, right? But then there are both folks like Lars Nilsson at Snowflake who did the same thing at Cloudera. Like they've created amazing like SDR organizations, right? And so if there isn't a senior executive, now again, like a real deal, like industry benchmark executive, not somebody with just a VP title, because there was just a need to give somebody a VP title, right? Like the person who cares the most about partnerships and partnering, and it'd be very clear, right? Because in executive meetings, you'll just know that this person actually has a very calming presence and a very collaborative approach, right? That person should own that, right? So that's like when there isn't an executive, right? When there is an executive and it's a senior person, and this person looks and feels something like this, right? When they're in a room, they are extremely supportive. They say yes to more things than they say no to, and they work with people and understand perspectives and actually try to move both partnerships and actually incubation efforts further, right? When you have that type of person, the only person who can actually empathize with that person is the CEO, because the CEO also has to then provide a very calming presence in the room and understand different perspectives and align different resources from multiple programs, which the programs are sales and there's marketing and customer success and product and engineering and finance and legal and HR, right? Like all of these have to be pulled together, right? Now, if it's just channel sales, we can park the person in sales, right? But the thought process of how do you support and make this executive successful, it's interesting because like over the time that I've been an executive, I've actually learned that it is the company's responsibility to make the executive successful equally as it is the executive's responsibility to make themselves successful, right? The companies where you bring executives on and just say, go become successful, they have a high executive churn, right? So I'll add that, just like, I know this is not related to the report, but this is a really important point. Roman or Kelly, do you want to add anything to that point before I go to the next part of the question?
I have a question actually related to that, and thank you so much for outlining this. And I agree with you. But I think where a lot of executives who are in partnerships who are very bright, they tend to struggle, right? Is that they sort of get pigeonholed occasionally in sort of being measured just purely on revenue, right? And they would want to do more sort of product integrations and do all this like type of partnerships that you've seen in your report. And I think like, how do you help them, or should help them sort of succeed? Or like, if you're like a CEO, what would be like your sort of way to make sure that this person would get sort of the most out of resources that they have and kind of get to the results they have?
This is a very P&L centric answer, right? Wherever you're going to fund this person from, whether it's sales and marketing or R&D or G&A, is the pressure that person is going to feel, right? Because the keeper of that P&L is actually the CFO. And if the CFO does not do a good job of holding people accountable, then he or she is going to get fired, right? And so what happens is, a new VP of partnerships or a chief partnerships officer is installed, and the ecosystem thinking, let's just focus on that piece, right? Which is a very cross-functional, even more cross-functional than just partnerships, right? The ecosystem thinking is not fully internalized, and you funded this person from sales and marketing, and the CFO, who is let's call it the financial orchestrator of the company, right? Basically looks at this person as a lead generation person or a revenue generation person, right? And so now the company is saying, hey, let's go do ecosystems. But the person is stuck in sales and marketing. The CFO is like, WTF? And you go to a board meeting and they're looking at this person saying, wait, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this, right? And so I think the more interesting thing is like, yes, if you want to incubate the partnerships program, right? I always say pay the person from G&A. And then if your customers are saying, we want integrations because our workflows are not complete without them, or your customers are saying, we would like to buy your product through another company because we already have an existing relationship and it's easier for us to procure, right? Then you decide whether to fund this person out of R&D or out of sales and marketing, right? But not understanding where you're going to fund this person and this team from, and not understanding the overall, let's call it company strategy, whether it's just partnerships or ecosystems or biz dev, which is large BD deals, right? Then what happens is you kind of like are in a mismatch. And I'll also say go a step further and call the partnership leader out as well. And this is the whole reason why partnership leaders, the organization exists, right? Is a lot of cases the partnership leader is not seasoned enough to understand that this is happening. But there are tons of organizations supporting CROs to understand whether CROs are lead revenue generators or revenue routers, right? Because today when we install a CRO, we always have a VP of sales that reports to a CRO, right? We don't have just a CRO and then have like all these other functions, right? And so what happens is because there's not enough coaching, there's not enough content, there's not enough experience around how do we make this executive, organize this executive and make that executive successful, we run into these issues where then this person gets parked in some other organization and then ultimately gets stressed out because they do 17 different things because that's how they're trained. And then you run into these problems. So hopefully, I wanted to give some context on like the P&L view of this problem because it's a much simpler way to look at it. And then you can set this person up for success.
Kelly, I would love to to maybe like throw a curveball to you, right? I found that people tend to ask the same question, and I sort of guilty myself. I've been asking the same questions where the person leading partnership should be in an organization, how like partnership should be incentivized, what are the KPIs, and so on. In terms of like seeing these partnerships in different forms and through different lenses, what do you think like people should be asking themselves when they start in partnership or lead partnerships that they may not be asking?
This is being talked about to some degree, but I think there's probably 2 points that I think need to be broken down more. And one is, how do you develop relationships and trust at scale with your partners? Because that looks very different than very hands-on strategic partners where you're having all this one-on-one time. And then the other thing is, how do we really make these conversations effective into other departments and functions, right? Because partnerships needs product, they need engineering resources, they need marketing, they need sales, they need all these other functions to have the impact that they can have. And I think we're all aware of that, but and there's some of the contributions in this book talked about how you can do that, right? Like what do you actually do? Like one of the suggestions was look in your CRM, find the 10 biggest deals that are currently up for grabs, and then go look at them. And this is very manual, right? Go look at them very closely, find out which partners you can bring them in on as many of those deals as you can, and then you've just associated yourself with all the biggest deals. Like that's a very individual play into the sales org, right? But I think we don't talk enough about how you get product and engineering to give you more resources when you need more to either build integrations or support integrations, right? So your API, if there's any extensibility in your platform, like that has to be built by your team. And so, I would love if we had further conversations around both of those 2 points, because I think it is something we're aware of, but I don't see people really getting tactical and specific about how you execute on those two things.
Fantastic points, actually. From my personal experience, when I was in partnerships, I found myself to be sort of cheerleader in chief, right? So you just go like to all these departments and you cheerlead, and you're like, oh, it's like we just like about to launch these partnerships, and like and sort of you need to somehow find time to cheerlead inside the organization, outside of organization, and I mean. Probably people know, like in this room, know this even better than myself. Asher, from the time when the report was published, any insights that you found kind of interesting post publishing it?
I would say, and I mentioned this in the chat as well. Like to me, the most interesting thing was around like ad hoc allocation versus programmatic allocation. And, I really thought, right, and this is surprising, right, that more people understood the benefits of a partner program. And this came up in another podcast that we were doing, also actually not a podcast, but like a webinar, right, that when we started double clicking on just this part of the report, we realized that a lot of people don't understand partner program design. And to me, that was crazy because like we understand the sales program design, we understand marketing campaign design and offer design and messaging design and all this stuff, right? But we don't apply the same rigor to the partner program. And then at that point, I realized, well, the problem is actually because the company is not heading into partnerships, and there's just an experiment happening, right? And it's kind of like alongside what you just said, which is like you had to go cheerlead, right? In the world we're about to head into, there's no cheerleading happening. It's like kill or be killed. I mean, I know that's a little intense, right? But like we're headed into like wartime mode, right? And so so we have to be extremely intentional about if we are going to partner or not, because if you aren't and you are, it's going to be such a distraction that you're going to get hit again, right? And then miss, and then have to do cuts, and then people lose their jobs. And so that was super interesting to me, just the ad hoc versus programmatic allocation piece of this. I just thought that we were much further, and looks like we aren't yet.
I just want to double click on what you just said about world that we are heading, and I think talking about your insights, programmatic, not programmatic. I think there's seems to be like a new group of partnership leaders, right? Who came not necessarily from like a very structured, maybe like channel or whatever world that used to be. Maybe they came from like MBA programs, or they came from different sort of type of backgrounds, like marketing. And I think they're sort of doing more sort of ad hoc stuff. I would like to hear maybe like from both of you, what would be your sort of advice, like looking at the year ahead, which is 2023, for, let's say, like a young partnership leader who just maybe started like a half a year ago, maybe a year ago, and they now get in like a pressure of like, okay, so what is so year ending, like what was the results and what's your plan for 2023? So what would be your advice in terms of like resources, insights, whatever advice you might give to this person?
I think attribution is key, really understanding what you're going to be able to attribute to partnerships in your organization, and also how your C-suite and board currently looks at those things, right? So if they don't care that you come along and you say, hey, if people have 4 integrations installed, they're 58% more have that higher retention. That's valuable. We can all know that in the partnership world, and retention is really important right now. But you really have to read the room and be honest with where you are in your own organization, because unfortunately, most partnership leaders do not have the luxury of being in an organization that everything is already viewed ecosystem first, right? There are some organizations like that, but most people, a key part of their job is that advocacy you were talking about. But right now, when things are being sort of cracked down upon, you really need to be honest. And if the answer is sourced revenue is what they really care about, then find out how you can get that attributed to partners, and you can ramp up that motion. And I think you kind of put on the back burner making the change, right? So you got to do the advocacy work to get those other values recognized. But understand in the short term, you're not gonna have the luxury to spend half your time on making that case, and everybody's just fine to wait, which I think a year ago, because of the macroeconomic conditions being so positive, everyone had a little bit more wiggle room, right? Like everything was on the up and up. So that would be my big advice, is try to get better attribution however you can, even if you have to go beg and steal from your ops department on getting those resources, and then really deliver on what your organization cares about strategically and values the most, and then spend like 10% of your time trying to advocate for the broader changes that get the other stuff recognized.
That is perfect. Thank you so much. And I completely agree with you. Asher?
I would just say in the next 18 months, if you don't report to the CEO, whoever you report to, whoever the C-suite executive is, just go and align with them. Because they have an extremely big fat target on their back. And whatever you can do to help them. Again, like if you're reporting to CRO, for sure you're going to have source revenue. If you're reporting to a CMO, but the company has deployed an account-based sales and marketing model, right? Something that Demandbase actually advocates for, right? Then you're kind of tied. And at that point in time, attribution makes sense because like you're actually going to be doing a lot more partner marketing than actually doing partner sales. And in partner marketing, whether you use UTM links or use campaign codes or use different landing pages, the systems already exist to support you. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? But what's important is to be laser focused on, if you report to CEO, then go align with that person and be like, hey, what is the 2 things I need to get done so it makes your next board meeting simpler? And if it's not that, if you are to the CFO, the CPO, whoever else it is, right, just align with them and say, what is the one thing I can do to make sure your next board meeting is straightforward, and just go be laser focused on that and just drop everything. And I know it's very hard because as partner people, we are the always be opening doors in parentheses people, right? So the shiny object syndrome is very, very high for us, right? And so, but like in the next 18 months, we got to like, dial it in and just be very focused on doing a few things really, really well and not worrying about it. And I also believe like the people that survive this are actually going to become pretty amazing, partnership leaders with solid operational chops.
Thank you so much, guys. I mean, like Gary Asher, like one outcome that I got myself from this discussion, which was fantastic, is that partnership people look like you guys, and they are very intelligent. They actually like a lot of layers of understanding of different facets of how organization operates, and then also how other companies around it operates. And thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I look forward to doing another one at some point. And in the meantime, I just want to be mindful with your time. Thank you so much for joining us today.
This was great. Thanks for having me. And by the way, folks, this partner ops campaign is a year-long campaign, as Kelly was talking about in the morning earlier on. And we intend to do multiple sessions. We can also come back on this podcast because as time goes by, we're collecting new data points, new stories, and new best mental models of how to share this. So thanks to Kelly for actually starting this whole thing.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much.